This morning, the committee begins its consideration of the nomination of Antonin Scalia to be Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
In 1986, history was made when Antonin Scalia was appointed to the United States Supreme Court.
Judge Antonin Scalia is the first Italian-American ever nominated to the Supreme Court and is a source of great, great pride to the Italian-American community. And Mama D'Amato, Judge, sends her best.
Scalia was lauded by senators from all backgrounds, eager to show their support for his achievement.
I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that my great-great-grandfather married a widow who was married first to an Italian-American.
Senator, I've been to Alabama several times, too.
When my confirmation was final, I got cartloads of mail from Italian Americans just expressing their pride in my appointment. I had no idea that it meant that much.
By the 1980s, Italian Americans were rising to positions of power and influence nationwide. Success stories could be found in every field, from Chrysler Chairman Lee Iacocca to Yale President A. Bartlett Giamatti to Vice Presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro.
There are no doors we cannot unlock.
The first woman, Geraldine Ferraro, to run on a major ticket, that was a big deal. She was breaking barriers, and she well knew it.
These were members of a breakthrough generation, children of immigrants who were making good on the struggle and sacrifice of their hard-working parents.
The idea that I could come from behind my mother and father's grocery store in South Jamaica, that we could come in one generation to this, the highest seat in the state of New York, that's enough for a lifetime.
New York Governor Mario Cuomo was a particular source of pride for many Italian Americans. He was a skilled politician with seemingly limitless potential.
Mario Cuomo was a hero to me. He thought deeply about things and expressed them eloquently. I don't think we really had a model like that before. He was a breath of fresh air, and I think a lot of Italian Americans felt that way.
Cuomo grew up in Queens, the youngest son of Italian immigrants. His father, Andrea, had arrived in the U.S. in 1927 and spent night and day working in his grocery store, determined to give his children a better life than the one he had. In 1949, Mario became the first member of his family to attend college when he entered St. John's University.
I met Mario at St. John's in second year. We were all from the same tough backgrounds. But he was a very astute guy, very bright student. You argued with him, but you never won, if you know what I mean.
Cuomo set his sights on becoming a corporate lawyer, but as an Italian American, he found it difficult to get even an interview with New York's top law firms.
He was number one or tied for number one in his law school class, but he was told to change the vowels in his name, to change his last name if he wanted to get a job on Wall Street.
Locked out of the New York power structure, Cuomo went back to his own community, taking up legal cases on behalf of Queens residents. Public service appealed to him, and he entered politics in the 1970s, quickly moving up the ranks to become Secretary of State, and then the first Italian-American elected governor of the state of New York.
I remember when he ran for governor of New York and he beat Ed Koch in the primary, I almost fell out of bed. I was so surprised that an Italian-American would be able to kind of achieve that level of political success.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the great Empire State and the whole family of New York, let me thank you for the great privilege
At the 1984 Democratic National Convention, Cuomo delivered a keynote address that catapulted him into the national spotlight and marked him as the next great hope of the Democratic Party.
Please allow me to skip the stories and the poetry and the temptation to deal in nice but vague rhetoric.
I was in the hall when that speech was being made. And usually in the conventions, when there are people speaking at the podium, people are walking around and talking and not paying attention.
That they helped lift up generations to the middle class and higher.
Little by little, as he continued to speak, the crowd got quieter and quieter and quieter.
And before that, to reach heights that our own parents would not have dared dream of.
Until, all of a sudden, everybody was sitting down and listening to the speech.
I learned about our kind of democracy from my father, and I learned about our obligation to each other from him and my mother. They were able to build a family and live in dignity and see one of their children go from behind their little grocery store in South Jamaica on the other side of the tracks where he was born to occupy the highest seat in the greatest state, in the greatest nation, in the only world we know.
It was compassionate, it was pragmatic, it took pride in his Italian-American heritage. I think that remains one of the top 10 speeches in history.
And it's a story, ladies and gentlemen, that I didn't read in a book or learn in a classroom. I saw it and lived it like many of you. I watched a small man with thick calluses on both his hands work 15 and 16 hours a day. I saw him once literally bleed from the bottoms of his feet. A man who came here uneducated, alone, unable to speak the language, who taught me all I needed to know about faith and hard work by the simple eloquence of his example.
What I remember about it, frankly, is tears in my eyes. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, it was so emotional.
I remember being enormously proud. Here was this educated man, speaking so brilliantly. And I felt like finally the real Italians were being shown to the world.
I thought, this is it. We're going to have an Italian-American president.
After Cuomo's star turn at the convention, rumors began to circulate that he might, in fact, seek the presidency. Republicans had held the White House for 12 years, and Democrats were eager for a candidate who could unseat George Bush in 1992.
I don't want to speculate anymore on the presidency, especially since you have every one of you...
Cuomo was hounded by reporters at every turn, but he remained coy about his plans.
Governor, emotionally, are you any further along than you were October 11th?
I don't change emotionally. Don't believe all these things they tell you about Italian males.
He deliberated until the final moment, keeping even his closest friends and colleagues in the dark.
I was hopeful that he would run, and I was getting ready for him to run. We had so many people who wanted to volunteer, who wanted to donate, who wanted to encourage him.
I thought this was a marvelous opportunity. I would say to him, Mario, think of the recognition possibilities here for not only yourself, but for Italian Americans.
On the evening of December 20th, 1991, Cuomo assembled a press conference to announce his last-minute decision.
He had waited right until the deadline for the filing for the New Hampshire primary. And the story was that the plane was on the tarmac with the engines revving up and he had to make a decision.
I was standing by like I'm doing right now, waiting for him to make up his mind. Some of the other guys calling me, what do you think, Joe, is he gonna do it? I said, well, you know as much as I do.
But with the whole nation watching, Mario Cuomo announced he would not seek the presidency.
But I would be less than honest if I did not admit to you my regret at not having the chance to run for president.
He cited his need to stay and finish his duties as governor, but few accepted his explanation. Many wondered if even in the 1990s, the country just wasn't ready for an Italian-American president.
I was very disappointed when Cuomo decided not to run. And I remember all the conversation about that. Well, of course he couldn't run. He could never win as an Italian. And just thinking, what the hell is that about? You know, I mean, aren't we far enough away from that?
Like every Italian American of my generation who was prominent in politics, Cuomo had the stigma of the mafia to deal with. His decision not to run, I think, was because he knew what a campaign would be if he became a candidate. Bill Clinton, another candidate at the same time, instead of Mario Cuomo, there's something mafia-like about him. That was already a matter of record.
It's a great deal of speculation there that's unwarranted, totally unwarranted. Innuendos, that's all it is. It's just a lot of innuendo boo.
For Mario Cuomo and other Italian Americans breaking through in the 1980s, it seemed that almost no level of success and achievement would free them from the stigma of the mafia.
You know, I was confirmed 98-0, okay? I hope some of that is because I was so doggone well qualified. But I later came to understand that a lot of it was simply because it meant so much to Italian Americans. Because of this mafioso thing that they have hung around their neck, it meant so much to them to have an Italian American on the Supreme Court.
Judge Scalia has an outstanding educational and legal background.
Many of the senators who might otherwise have voted against me, who came from states with a large Italian American population, I'm sure they were aware of it. I think for Italian Americans, given what they most abhor, which is their identification with crime and the mafia, I wouldn't be surprised if they would be more proud to have an Italian American justice than to have an Italian American president. It meant an awful lot to them.